What is good, YouTube? It's your boy Jeff Rosado, and I'm back at it again with a sorcery video. This time I finally have some gameplay for you guys. So for this gameplay video, this was actually my first ever sorcery tournament that I've attended, and we went undefeated 4-0. Yes, sir. I piloted the Elemental Throne deck that I have posted all over my YouTube. And for those of you who've seen it, not much has really changed. I only added 2 cards, that being Courtesan Thais and Roots of Yggdrasil. I think that's how you pronounce it. And yeah, overall, I was satisfied with the results of the deck. At this tournament, we weren't allowed a sideboard. We were only allowed cards that we owned, and everything that we had in our deck was all that we can play throughout this event. So again, it was 4 rounds, and we'll go ahead and get on to the first round here. I'm playing against AJ, and here AJ is going to start off with a village, paying the cost to create a soldier token, passing to me, generating 1 of each threshold because of the Elementalist. And here I play the site, the color out of space, and then I cast not only an Onyx Core, but a Philosopher Stone. I had a powerful turn 1. Generating my mana as early as I possibly can is really key with this deck, because you really want to throw out as many of your high mana cards. So here AJ is going to go ahead and play another village. Now, as you can see there, they played this site upside down. This was AJ's first tournament, and I had found out that they were borrowing a deck from one of their friends. AJ, I assume, was just a new player, so he was constantly asking me questions on what certain cards did. And of course I was very patient, and I made sure that he understood all the cards that I was playing. So from here, I go ahead and play out a Windmill, generating an insane and absurd amount of threshold here, allowing me to cast a Browse. So I'm looking through the top 7 cards of my deck, and it was interesting. See, from here, they played a Grey Wolves, and I took a leap of faith here, and I went for my Grim Reaper. So I've gone up against an Earth deck before that only had like maybe 2 or 4 copies of Grey Wolves in it. But I just felt like maybe they were playing more Grey Wolves, and I just went for the Grim Reaper just in case. I didn't want to lose an opportunity here with it. I went out and cast an Apprentice Wizard to draw a spell. AJ here is going to go ahead and untap, throwing out another village here. I believe they're going to go ahead and pay the cost. Yes, they did pay the cost. We didn't have the tokens for certain cards, so we just used dice to represent it. And then here I felt super comfortable. They ended up playing a 2nd copy of Grey Wolves. Now they're only playing a few copies in their deck. More than likely they wouldn't draw that many copies early in the game. I mean, nothing's impossible, but the odds of them drawing 2 at that moment made me feel like as if maybe they were playing more than just the standard 4. So here I go ahead and untap. And I think I just go ahead and take my shot here. I go ahead and play another site with a Philosopher Stone, the Grim Reaper costing 1 less, so I only needed to spend 1 mana here. And then with my remainder 3 mana, I again took my shot with my Grapple Shot, and I sling the Grim Reaper right into their Grey Wolves. So for those of you who don't know what Grim Reaper does, it has lethal, and at any point when it would kill a minion, it's instead removed from the game. I then get to check my opponent's hand and their spellbook, and I get to exile all copies that I find. Now, again, this was huge because I just assumed, hey, maybe they have more Grey Wolves in their deck. AJ revealing their entire hand, and it's stacked with Grey Wolves. I was trying to search through AJ's deck. They just kept flipping through cards. After I explained how Grim Reaper works, they revealed their entire deck to me, and I mean, that's it. That's the end of round 1. I just could not believe that game. I mean, again, I took a leap of faith against Grey Wolves, But the moment they played that second one, I felt just super comfortable with shooting off the Grim Reaper. But man, I had no idea that it was going to end that quick. I mean, them revealing their deck to me was, they did have a few cards in it that they probably could have played the game and progressed it a little more. But after AJ just lost most of their deck, they just go ahead and surrender here. So, great round one. We go ahead and take the victory against Grey Wolves. And then here we're going to go ahead and go into the round two. So, I was going up against an Air and Fire Sorcerer, I guess, control deck. It didn't really get to show much of what it could do. But they were kind of, explaining to me like what they were kind of going for, which was a semi mid-range strategy. Again, we don't really get to see much here. We go ahead and throw out a few sites. They are going to go ahead and play their ruins here. Passing. Go ahead and take my turn. And now this was pretty interesting. I drew into a Sinkhole, and in my opening hand, I already had a Sinkhole and I had Mirror Realm. So I just went on the Sinkhole strategy, and this round was just super crucial for that. For those of you who followed the group on Facebook, you guys may already know that I love Sinkhole. Actually, I hate it more than I love it. I think that Sinkhole is a really unfair card, and this round just kind of proves it. My opponent playing a Men of Lang here. Pretty scary. If that gets to me and deals damage, I'm going to be able to discard cards from my hand, and that's not what I really want to do. So from here, I go ahead and throw out the Mirror Realm, copying the Sinkhole, and I even have a core here, which is great. So I'll go ahead and throw out the Aquamarine Core. I believe I had an answer for this Mana Bling. I did. I had Lightning Bolt, so I went and dispatched that. And then this is where the game just goes out of hand. I used both my Sinkholes to destroy 2 of their sites. We didn't have any rubble cards, so we flipped the sites upside down to represent that. And yeah, they go ahead and I believe they play another Ruins. So this was pretty important because I noticed that they were on Air and Fire, right? And with Sinkhole, you really want to destroy their dual sites as early as possible because you can kind of prevent them from having a specific threshold. Here we go ahead and play the 3rd Sinkhole here. I can literally write a book on Sinkhole. Sinkhole literally has so many ridiculous interactions with it. And if Sorcery ever comes out with a ban list, I'll straight up say that Sinkhole needs to be the first card banned. Courtesan Thais is probably the second, but this game will show you why Sinkhole needs to get banned. We go ahead and use the Sinkhole, we destroy their ruins. Again, my opponent's still on 1 site at this point. I have an Aquamarine Core and I have another site. I was still able to cast my Apprentice Wizard and use the Sinkhole to disrupt their mana. That's really unfair. Anytime that you're able to progress the game while simultaneously preventing your opponent from progressing is just really bad. And then right here, we actually had a good card against them. We had the Smokestacks of Gnaak. Drawing into a Philosopher Stone, playing it so good. So Smokestacks will turn off their deserts here, which is like super good. I go ahead and move the Apprentice Wizard up and I use a Dream Quest on it. I think this might have been a slight misplay on my behalf. See, because I felt safe with the Smokestacks. If they drew into deserts, it would at least be able to prevent the ability from destroying or dealing damage to my wizard. But because they are an Air and Fire deck, they could have had a Lightning Bolt here. Luckily for us, this is the rest of the game. My opponent surrenders, revealing a Daperyll Vampire, 2 of them, an Apprentice Wizard, a Headless Haunt, and then a River of Flame. They surrendered because they had no air threshold and the cards in their hand cost way too much. And from there, yeah, they scooped up the game. And that just shows the power of Sinkhole right here in this game. When, I mean, my opponent literally had cards that cost really high mana, and a lot of them were air threshold. I originally didn't even know I was stripping them of their air until I played the 3rd Sinkhole. And after they played the 2nd Ruins, I thought to myself, okay, you can only have 3 ruins in a deck. And if I were to take out 2 of them, that means that they're going to have a harder time drawing into the 3rd one. I mean, granted, I technically drew 3 copies of a site, so again, nothing's impossible. But for there in that exact instance, they just were not able to generate their mana. They were not able to maintain board presence, and they weren't able to get out their minions fast enough. Now, in my opinion, I probably wouldn't have surrendered. I think that the smartest thing to have done in their shoes were to have just keep drawing sites until they eventually got the air threshold they needed. And also, I had no more sinkholes, so I felt like at that point in the game, they still could have taken their time to build up their ladder, but they just didn't want to play that game, so they ended up just surrendering, which is totally fine with us. We ended up taking round 2. So going into round 3, this was actually a pretty neat matchup here. In our opening hand, we actually... I can't really see my opening hand. It's hard to see. Okay, so we have a core. I think we had an Apprentice Wizard and a Daperyll Vampire. Not all too impressive. We do draw the Immortal Throne here, which is pretty interesting. It's the namesake of the deck, and usually when you're playing this deck, if it's in your opening hand or if you draw it early, you want to slam it out as quickly as you can. So I actually didn't play the core turn 1 because, again, when I'm playing the Immortal Throne, I needed to have something with the corresponding mana so then I can build the counters on the Immortal Throne. So being very patient here, I end up going out and playing another site. But then here, I believe I had to make a tough call because I had another core in my hand. So I had 2 cores, and I was thinking about holding some for the Immortal Throne, but I just, went and committed, and I played both my cores here. That way, on my following turn, I can slam the Immortal Throne and simultaneously play a site that turn, generating the first counter. See, how the Immortal Throne works is when you play a spell or a card with a specific mana cost, if it has the same mana cost as the number of counters on the throne, you increase the counters, and then that player that played the card draws another card. It's a lot, but it's well worth it because once you get the 8 counters with the Immortal Throne, you can basically just win. Our opponent here just getting super aggressive with the soldier tokens, and then they play Dryads, so it's pretty safe to say that they're kind of a Earth style deck. I would even go as far to say as they're an Earth aggro deck, which is pretty nuts. They're doing some decent damage here. We go ahead and play the Immortal Throne. We just got to commit to this strategy right now. If at any point our opponent's faster than us, the Immortal Throne's a really great card to have, especially early game, because now you can just race to its win condition as fast as you can. And from here, we end up drawing a spell. And this was actually huge, because the Mirror Realm came in play as a copy as, I think, the Windmill. And since we played that site, we were able to play that Philosopher Stone, and since it had 1 mana, we went and got the second counter on the Immortal Throne. So it was definitely worth it investing into those cores early game. I was a little worried that I wouldn't have a 1 mana for the throne, but drawing into that Philosopher Stone was so crucial. Now here, I thought things could have gone a little rough. They were playing their sites a little too close to ours. Generating more tokens. Our opponent here playing it common sense, and this was pretty nice because they didn't know how the Immortal Throne worked. Since they played a 2 mana cost spell, they triggered the Immortal Throne, thus getting its 3rd counter, and at the same time they drew a card. So with the Immortal Throne, you can choose whether to draw a spell or a site. So I believe here they choose to draw a site, and then with the common sense, yeah, they go ahead and fetch out an Amazon Warriors. It's pretty interesting. I think that maybe they were a common, or an ordinary based Earth style deck. Having common sense means that it's pretty good because they can search out almost any card in their deck. I assume that they, of course, had like other, rares and exceptionals. Now, my opponent does something very interesting here. They go ahead and move the Dryads and the soldiers in for combat, and they attack my site. They could have moved the soldiers to my Elementalist, which means that it could have disrupted the Immortal Throne. But I think that they were worried that the Elementalist could do combat and kill the soldiers themselves. From here we play a Vaults of Zul. I was really trying my best to get this off this game, but with the aggression that our opponent was giving us, it was very unlikely that we were going to give up a turn for them. So here we cast an Apprentice Wizard, triggering the Immortal Throne, drawing a sight from the throne, and then drawing a spell from the wizard. And this was just it. I felt like this was the turning point of the game right here. I had enough mana to cast a cave in, thankfully because of the Philosopher Stone, and I caved in their Dryads and 2 of their soldiers. So essentially they just get buried and put underneath the site, but since they don't have the burrowing ability, those minions cannot exist there, so therefore they all die. So with that one card, I was able to kill 3 of their minions, which was like just so relieving. Having more space and breathing room on the field was really good, and right here I feel very comfortable. We have mana accelerants, we have the Immortal Throne already at 5 counters, and I still had an Apprentice Wizard there in front of that soldier ready to block if necessary. So opponent will dish out, you guessed it, another village. I assume that they're going to go ahead and make a token here. Most of the time when people play villages, they always just go ahead and throw out the free body. It's well worth making more. Sorry about the camera angle. I was experimenting with like the life totals and like having the threshold symbols there, but right there, they do have a soldier token right there on that site. And then yes, so right here they cast a land surveyor, drawing a site. Very interesting. They have Dryads and land surveyor in the deck, so I feel like their deck is just stacked with villages, being able to just have mana to play out, I guess, their Amazon warriors, and using the soldiers to really dish out damage. Now here, they play a pretty scary card here. They play a Siege Ballista right under the land surveyor. With Siege Ballista, they can tap the bearer and they can tap another minion at that site. And essentially tapping both can give them a free lightning bolt. They can deal 3 damage to any unit up to 2 steps away. So right there, my Elementalist was right in the line of fire of that Siege Ballista. So I was feeling a little pressured here. We go ahead and play a Daperyll Vampire, thus triggering the Immortal Throne, drawing a sight actually. And Daperyll Vampire made me feel a little safe because now I had something in the line of that land surveyor. And we go ahead and play our site here. Actually, I think on this turn we have an answer for the land surveyor. Yeah, we do. Okay. We lightning bolt the land surveyor, which is great because now if they were to play any other minion on the site of the Siege Ballista, they would have to tap it and spend a turn just to re-equip it to something. So that buys us a little bit more time. And then yeah, we also played the site as close as we could to the ruins. They were getting really close to cutting us off on our sites, and that's something that you really want to pay attention to when you're playing sorcery. The placement on your sites is very important. Right here they play a free city, and if I didn't play that vaults or I believe it was a step that I played, if I didn't play that step right in front of the free city, it could have gone out of hand and they could have cut us off. So here they go ahead and play the Amazon warriors, and they move their soldier to that site. So right now, and they moved their other soldier to the free city, which is good. Feeling very comfortable. The Immortal Throne's on 6 counters, so now all we need to do is just essentially play 2 more cards and we can win the game. Try to get there as quickly as we possibly can. This was a good turn here because our opponent was so focused on closing out our right side, and again, they were being very aggressive this entire game. But now, we go ahead and play a Grandmaster Wizard, which is huge because we trigger the Immortal Throne, drawing a card, and then with the Grandmaster Wizard, since it has its Genesis ability, we draw 3 more cards, and boom, there it is. We drew a Grapple Shot, Lightning Bolt, and Dream Quest, all 3 amazing cards. I still had mana here, so with the mana that I had, I went and played Dream Quest on the Grandmaster Wizard, just completely taking my shot with it. Dream Quest says, essentially, I put an allied spellcaster to sleep, and as long as it doesn't take damage, on my next turn, the Dream Quest will activate, allowing me to search my deck for any card, which is crucial because now I can search for the final card that I need for the Immortal Throne. So I put the Grandmaster Wizard to sleep, and it's far away from everything. See, if my opponent taps to equip the Siege Ballista, and if they use the Siege Ballista's ability somehow in the same turn, our Grandmaster Wizard is 3 sites away, so we're safe from that. Plus, they're not playing Air Threshold, so I don't have to really worry about Lightning Bolt. They're not playing Red, so I don't have to worry about any fire or damage spells. So here, really, the only thing that's scary is Haven or Bury, because if they got rid of the Immortal Throne, then our entire strategy is flushed, and we would have to combat up against their army here. Playing a second Amazon Warriors here. Now, they go ahead and use, I believe, one of the Amazon Warriors in the token to just attack, because really that's their best option. They would have to tap their Amazon Warriors to equip it to the Ballista, and I think that dealing more damage in this turn just made more sense. So they go ahead and dish out 6 damage, putting us at 9, getting really close here, but as long as they just had no answer to Throne or no way to deal damage to the Grandmaster Wizard, we just felt safe. Now, the token was going to go ahead and attack my site, and I was debating about blocking or intercepting with the Daperyll Vampire, at least to gain life, but honestly, I should have done that because I just figured that their turn was over, they already spent their mana, and I had nothing to worry about. But you always really want to take precaution just in case, and I should have intercepted. But either way, it doesn't matter here. We take our turn, the Dream Quest activates, searching out a Death Dealer. Now, Death Dealer costs 7 mana, which we more than certainly have enough for. And now the Immortal Throne is at 7 counters. So now we cast the Death Dealer after drawing our card per turn here. Just counting up the mana, making sure that everything is right, having a threshold. We cast the Death Dealer, triggering the Immortal Throne, and yeah, that's it. Our opponent just couldn't do anything. They were just checking the field, and that's it for round 3. Yeah, man, the Immortal Throne it was everything that entire game. Again, whenever you draw it early, you really want to commit to it as best as you can. It's a pseudo combo / win condition, so being able to get that out as quickly as you can and being able to just have those counters just increase is just really great. Our opponent did help us there with the Common Sense triggering the Immortal Throne, which was good, and that's another thing too. Even though our opponent can draw sites from the Immortal Throne, it's just really great to note that when we play it, and if our opponent does cast things, we're still gaining an advantage. Sure, they're gaining card advantage, but really what we're trying to go for here is just a win. So, we're here on round 4, and I was a little intimidated by this round. They had a Death Speaker. So far, everyone at that tournament, they only just had Sorcerer. There was an Avatar of Air being played somewhere around the table, but seeing that Death Speaker, especially in the finals, was a little nerve-wracking. For those of you who follow the community in Facebook or just follow the leagues that are being played on tabletop, Death Speaker is probably tier 1. Actually, I think there was a Gen Con tournament, and I think that was the first ever Sorcery tournament, and someone piloted a Death Speaker deck and topped that deck. So Death Speaker is a really strong deck. It essentially just gains card advantage from cards in the graveyard. And yeah, I felt just very comfortable with my hand. I was just comfortable with how I was playing the game so far. And I believe this game was just really good too, because I had the Immortal Throne in my opening hand, I believe. So just committing to that really early was just everything I needed. So here we actually are on the play here. We go ahead and play a Steppe, following by an Aquamarine Core, passing the turn, feeling very comfortable with our mana here. So Death Speaker, we're going to go ahead and play a Dome of Osiris, which is very interesting. I really wasn't expecting them to have that in their deck. So from there, I was a little interested in what thresholds and elements they were playing. But of course, they were playing the standard fire and air, I believe. Maybe they had another threshold, but we'll see. So from here, on my turn, I played a Highland Princess. This was really great. This allowed me to search for any artifact with 1 or less mana. So from here, I could have gone for the Philosopher's Stone, but I decided to just get mana accelerants instead. Going for the core here, and I believe I really wanted it for the threshold. So having the same mana, we go ahead and play the core, and now we pass. And now this is really good because this is our second turn. We have 4 mana, and on our next turn, we'll be able to play a site. So you already know what's going to happen. We are most likely going to play our Immortal Throne and site on the same turn. Opponent here plays a Desert and a Vile Imp, just dispatching the Highland Princess. And I thought at first they were going to cast the Highland Princess from the graveyard, but they didn't have the air threshold for it, which was good. Yep, so right here we just go ahead and slam out the Immortal Throne with our 4 mana, tapping our Avatar here, and then we play a Sinkhole. So this is a really good turn here. So being able to play the Sinkhole gets our first counter on the Immortal Throne. We go ahead and draw, I believe, a site, and we drew a spell. Alright, so then we use the Sinkhole to just kind of take our chance here and just slow them down a little bit. I felt very comfortable because we still had mana, and I mean, again, we have 4 mana, and they only have 1 site at this point. So they go ahead and they go out and play a Shifting Sands, okay? So Shifting Sands would have been good if they had more deserts in play, but they did not. The Vile Imp going in and dealing us 2 damage. Take our turn here. So we draw a site. I thought that was a Sinkhole, but that was an Aqueduct. We're gonna go ahead and play that. So now we have 5 mana, and our threshold is just stacked to oblivion. Like, there's just no way how we're not gonna be able to cast anything. I cast a Daperyll Vampire right where the Vile Imp was. If they tried to attack anything, the Daperyll Vampire was right there to block it, and it's really crucial because we can also gain life from its strikes. And it's also good too because it has Airborne. Our opponent can't really target it. So here, actually, they make an interesting play here, and I think this is very big brain. They played the ruins next to the dome instead of placing it up front. That could be risky because we can also cut them off from mana, but I think they did that because they were aware of our Sinkhole, and maybe they were just worried that if that ruins got Sinkhole, they were going to be stuck on mana. So a very, very smart decision they made. They cast an Apprentice Wizard, drawing a card. Oh yeah, and this turn was insane. So we draw a Boneyard and we play it. We bring back our Highland Princess. Our opponent had no minions in the graveyard at this point, which was good because now we were the only person permitted to bring back a minion because of the Boneyard. Since the Highland Princess came in play, we then searched our Philosopher's Stone, which was good. We played a Philosopher's Stone, triggering the Immortal Throne, thus drawing us a card. And mind you, we didn't spend any mana for that Highland Princess, so we go ahead and, you know, we have a bunch of mana here and we feel safe. The Lightning Bolt, I'm gonna go ahead and take out the Apprentice Wizard, triggering the Immortal Throne again, drawing us a card. And then from here, the Daperyll Vampire is gonna get rid of the Vile Imp, gaining us life. Now from here, I felt comfortable because if Death Speaker used its ability to bring back a minion, 1, it would be banished because of its effect. 2, even if it dished out damage, it's not enough damage to get rid of this Daperyll Vampire. And here we even play a Grapple Shot. We're going to shoot a projectile straight ahead. The Daperyll Vampire is going to strike the Death Speaker, and then we're going to get life back and go back up to 20. So that turn was just insane, like so much value, and I felt very comfortable after that turn, being able to take out all their resources, gain more counters on the Immortal Throne, and gain life while simultaneously putting pressure on the board. There was just no way. Like, we had everything that we needed at this point. Our opponent plays a Cathera Mechanism. Very interesting that they're playing that. I assume that they just used it for Lightning Bolt, being able to just control what they're going to shoot down. They cast Apprentice Wizard with the Death Speaker. It gets banished, and they're able to draw their spell. Go ahead and untap here. So Immortal Throne's at 4 counters. Oh yeah, okay, so for those who are probably wondering why I moved back with a Daperyll Vampire, this was actually very important here. Being able to still dish out damage. We don't gain life because we attack their site. It's loss of life, not damage. However, it's closer to our site, so now we can cast a Selfsame Simulacrum closer to the vampire, thus copying it. We could have copied a Highland Princess here, but I felt like I wanted to just have as much board presence as I could, just in case they had an answer for the throne. Which, by the way, Selfsame Simulacrum triggered the Immortal Throne, giving us our 5th counter. We go ahead and play a color out of space, and then yeah, we just took a big risk here, and we played a Courtesan Thais. Used the Immortal Throne, I believe, here to draw sight, because I didn't want them to have more cards to use. We attack with the Highland Princess, and then Courtesan Thais' effect will play an effect here. So essentially, I'm able to control my opponent on the next turn. Now, the upside to this, I guess, or rather a fair upside, is that our opponent gets to control us on the next turn, which I guess seems fair, but Courtesan Thais is really, really broken, just for the fact that I can control my opponent first. And most people don't think that that means much, but that means everything if you can play out your opponent's hand first. So here, they had a tower in their hand, they were just holding onto it. We went and played the tower as far as we could away from our lands or sites, and then bam, we used their Lightning Bolt and their Minor Explosion, targeting their Death Speaker, putting them at 5 life. From here, it does not look that great to them. And here, this was interesting. They had a Nimbus Djinn in their hand, which costs 6 mana. If I would have cast that on their turn, that would have triggered the Immortal Throne, which would have been good, but then they would have drawn the spell. So instead, what I did was I just dished out the damage. I let them hold on to the only minion that they had, which was the Nimbus Djinn. And I felt like on their turn, if they just played it, you know, we would be good. So here, our opponent's going to take our turn. We have a Browse and an Apprentice Wizard. And our opponent does something completely unexpected. They just pass. They didn't play anything. They didn't move any of my minions. Nothing. They just took information and just passed. I think that was a big mistake, because right here, I think the Browse wins me the game. If they would have played Browse, they could have easily looked at our deck, found information, even selected a card that probably could have benefited them. Also, my minions were really close to their Death Speaker, so they could have just moved it far away, but they just chose not to do anything. I don't think that's a smart decision. If you're ever gaining the ability of Courtesan Thais, try to gain as much advantage as you can for the board state. Now here, our opponent plays a desert, kills our Highland Princess, and then casts their Nimbus Djinn, and they didn't realize that it did trigger the Immortal Throne. They did get to draw a card, and of course they were spent out of mana and passed. And then here, this is where the misplay came in. If they would have played that Browse, they would have had the game longer. But right here, the Browse gets us the victory. We look at the top 7 cards of our deck, and we have not 1 but 2 cards that are presented here for victory. So I've already used the Immortal Throne with Death Speaker earlier in that tournament. I saw the Ancient Dragon and was like, you know what, I felt like I wanted to cast this, so I added the Ancient Dragon to my hand. I had all the mana and threshold in the world. I cast the Ancient Dragon right in front of the Djinn, and yeah, the Immortal Throne goes up to its 8th counter, and we claim victory. So right here, yeah, 4-0. People were clapping, and they're, you know, very impressed by my winnings. And It was a really fun tournament. I mean, a lot of those games, especially the first two, the games went by really fast. And normally when you play Sorcery, the games usually last about easily 30 minutes or so. But surprisingly, all those games were pretty fairly fast. And that really goes to show how strong this deck can be. Racing out the Immortal Throne can just shorten the game. And people sometimes, all that entire tournament, they didn't realize that their cards triggered the Immortal Throne. So some of them were like, okay, well, I get the draw spell off of it. That's great, and that's good value, but it's not great whenever I can win the game with it faster. So, that's the kind of dilemma that you're going to have when facing up against this matchup. But I had a fun time. Shout out to everyone at that tournament. I had a really great time there. I ended up winning 3 packs. I opened, one of them and pulled an Eric's Curiosa, which was really sweet. The other 2 packs weren't all that great. And the person who went in 3rd place actually opened up a Philosopher Stone. And oh man, it would have been great if I opened up my 3rd Philosopher Stone in that pack. But, that was a great victory for them. They felt like, yeah, they didn't do too great in the tournament, but they walked out of there with a really neat prize. And yeah. So guys, I hope that you enjoyed this gameplay video. I hope that I explained as much as I could about the thought processes and what could have been different from both players' perspectives. If you like this video, definitely give it a thumbs up, please subscribe, and please stay tuned for more content. I really appreciate it, guys. I hope y'all have a good one.